What makes you want to talk about this? You've not talked about this at all until now. Why do you want to now talk about this, Colin?
That was an emotional day on the day that she died.
Have you ever wondered what really happened behind the scenes on the tragic night Princess Diana lost her life? Prepare yourself for an emotional journey as we uncover the astonishing details shared by one of the people closest to her final moments, her trusted driver. This incredible first-hand account reveals the heartbreak, the lingering guilt, and the haunting memories of that fateful night in Paris. Today, we dive deep into a story that has long been shrouded in mystery as Princess Diana's driver finally breaks his silence. Princess Diana's death, which took place on August 31st, 1997, remains one of the most shocking and heartbreaking tragedies of modern times. The entire world grieved as news broke that the Princess of Wales had died in a car crash in the Pont de tunnel in Paris. Amid the sorrow and the countless questions surrounding that night, stories have surfaced and theories have abounded. Yet only a handful of individuals can say that they were close enough to know the genuine details of her final hours. One such individual is Colin Tebbut, often spelled differently in various sources, Diana's regular driver and devoted staff member. For more than 20 years, Colin chose not to speak publicly about those events. However, in a recent television interview, he shared his recollections, struggles, and emotional turmoil about not being with Diana on that tragic night. He spoke about the anguish of learning she'd been in a severe accident and the heartbreak he experienced upon arriving at the hospital. Beyond rehashing official investigations, hearing Colin's words provides a deeply human view of how that single night changed so many lives forever. Let's walk through the entire timeline leading up to Diana's death, the heartbreak in the tunnel, the chaos of the aftermath, and the wave of grief that swept the entire planet. On August 30th, 1997, Princess Diana and her companion, Egyptian film producer Dodi Fayed, traveled from Sardinia to Paris on a private jet. They had spent several days cruising the Mediterranean on a yacht owned by Dodi's father, Mohammed Al Fayed, and intended to stop in Paris briefly before heading back to London. Their destination in Paris was the Ritz Hotel, also owned by Mohammed. By this point in her life, Diana had grown accustomed to constant media attention and the presence of paparazzi wherever she went. The night in Paris was no different. With dozens of photographers waiting outside the Ritz, Diana and Dodi crafted a plan to slip away undetected, unaware that this very plan would end in unspeakable tragedy. The alternative arrangement was orchestrated by Henri Paul, the deputy head of security at the Ritz. He was to drive a black 1994 armored Mercedes-Benz S280 saloon while a decoy car left from the main entrance of the hotel, aiming to distract the paparazzi. As the decoy vehicle pulled away from the Ritz, photographers swarmed it, hoping to snap pictures of the princess. Meanwhile, Diana and Dodi quietly exited from the rear entrance, hoping to avoid the intrusion of flashing cameras. Waiting for them in the Mercedes were Henri Paul behind the wheel and Trevor Rees-Jones, a loyal member of the Al Fayed family's security team, in the front passenger seat. None of the car's occupants were wearing seatbelts that night. Whether it was a simple oversight or a result of feeling rushed, that decision would prove fatal. Approaching the Pont de tunnel around midnight, the Mercedes was speeding. Later estimates would put it at about twice the legal limit. In the darkness of the underpass, Henri Paul lost control of the vehicle and struck a pillar head-on. The collision's violence caused massive damage to the car. Dodi Fayed and Henri Paul were declared dead at the scene. Trevor Rees-Jones, though severely injured, ultimately survived. Princess Diana was still alive when emergency services arrived, but her injuries were dire. Witnesses said she was conscious and even muttered, "Oh my God," moments after the crash. She slipped into cardiac arrest at the scene, but was resuscitated briefly before being rushed to Paris's Pitié-Salpêtrière hospital. Emergency physicians worked tirelessly to save her, attempting internal cardiac massage and other interventions. Despite these efforts, Diana was pronounced dead in the early morning hours of August 31st. The shockwaves that followed her death swept across the globe, leaving countless people in disbelief that their beloved people's princess could be gone so suddenly. While the official French investigation would later conclude that Henri Paul's recklessness and intoxication caused the accident, many questions lingered. Why wasn't Diana wearing a seatbelt? Was the paparazzi's relentless pursuit partly to blame? Who was truly responsible for this calamity? And even decades later, interest in Diana's story never waned, with new theories and interviews continually surfacing. Yet one crucial voice, her longtime driver, Colin, remained conspicuously silent for more than 2 decades. When Colin finally agreed to share his story, viewers on Good Morning Britain were taken aback by the raw emotion he displayed. He admitted feeling an unshakable sense of guilt, even though he had not been assigned to drive Diana that evening. The main reason for that guilt, he explained, was the simple notion that, under normal circumstances, he would have been at the wheel, guiding Diana to safety the way he'd done many times before. He couldn't help wondering if the outcome might have been different had he been there, applying his usual vigilance and protective care. Although a seemingly unfair burden to shoulder, no one could have foreseen the events. Colin's sense of responsibility is a testament to the deep loyalty he felt toward Diana. He also recounted his arrival at the hospital where Diana's body was taken after the accident. The scene was chaotic, with press, medical personnel, and security all scrambling to manage the evolving crisis. As Colin entered the room, he saw Diana's body on a bed. Emotion hit him hard as he noticed onlookers standing nearby, even on the roof, meaning there was a risk outsiders could snap photos of the princess in her most vulnerable state. Concerned for her dignity, he immediately took action. He hung blankets along the windows to shield her from prying eyes, but that act turned the room stiflingly hot. So he brought fans to provide some air circulation. In a moment he'll never forget, the fan's breeze moved Diana's hair and eyelashes, momentarily creating the heartbreaking illusion that she was alive. Colin recalled having to turn away to steady himself. Though he was considered a professional at all times, that moment cut through his composure. Colin emphasized that, despite her separation from Prince Charles and her evolving public image, Diana never lost touch with her regal roots in the day-to-day. He described a warm, good-humored woman who treated her staff kindly, but also maintained the boundary required by royal status. That boundary never diminished the level of loyalty or fondness her staff felt for her. Colin remembered riding in the car with her frequently and being struck by her sense of fun and laughter, a side rarely witnessed by the media. After Diana's death, the royal family faced a massive wave of public outcry. Early criticism focused on the family's initial response, which some deemed too reserved and detached. At the time, the Queen and Prince Charles were at Balmoral in Scotland with William and Harry, attempting to shield the boys from the overwhelming media glare. Protocol dictated that flags at royal residences only fly the royal standard when the monarch is in residence, and that the royal standard never flies at half-mast. Thus, Buckingham Palace displayed no half-masted Union flag to reflect the nation's mourning, sparking public frustration. Eventually, the outpouring of grief and pressure from the public led to an unprecedented decision. The Union Jack flew at half-mast on the day of Diana's funeral. This large-scale public mourning was unlike anything Britain had seen in decades. Outside Kensington Palace, Diana's home, masses of bouquets piled up, some areas 5 feet deep in flowers, cards, teddy bears, candles, poems, and personal tributes. The scene became so overwhelming that traffic had to be rerouted, and the public was politely asked to stop bringing more flowers. Across the globe, people reacted similarly. In the United States, thousands gathered for memorial services. In Bosnia, landmine victims honored her with tributes because of her passionate advocacy to end the threat of landmines. In Egypt, Dodi Fayed's homeland, hundreds lined up at the British Embassy in Cairo. The world was united in a remarkable display of grief. Diana's funeral took place at Westminster Abbey on September 6, 1997, drawing nearly 3 million people to London's streets. Many more watched on television, an estimated 2.5 billion worldwide. High-profile figures, including then U.S. First Lady Hillary Clinton, and prominent celebrities such as George Michael and Elton John, attended the ceremony. Elton John's performance of his reworked Candle in the Wind, now famously dedicated to England's Rose, became a cultural milestone. This single track broke records for worldwide sales. The day was marked by emotional tributes, tears, and a glimpse into the personal grief of her loved ones. Princes William and Harry walked behind their mother's coffin, accompanied by their father, Prince Charles, their grandfather, Prince Philip, and Diana's brother, Earl Spencer. Earl Spencer delivered a speech that indirectly criticized the royal family's handling of Diana and scolded the tabloid press for the relentless intrusion he believed contributed to her tragic end. Crowds outside the Abbey and in Hyde Park applauded this bold address, breaking long-held codes of conduct during somber royal ceremonies. Following the funeral, Diana's body was taken to her ancestral home in Althorp. There, in a private ceremony attended only by family and close friends, she was laid to rest on a small island in the middle of a peaceful lake known as the Oval. Her coffin was lined with lead, as is the tradition for British royalty, making it weigh 1/4 of a ton. She wore a black dress designed by Catherine Walker and held a rosary given to her by Mother Teresa, who coincidentally died the day before Diana's funeral. Since then, Althorp has been open to visitors for limited times each year, offering a chance to remember the princess in a quiet setting. Proceeds from the visits go to charitable causes. Although the immediate global reaction was profound sadness, over time, a few critics emerged to question what they perceived as a near hysterical wave of mourning. Commentators like Christopher Hitchens and certain British journalists stated that the sense of national meltdown was out of proportion to the actual relationship most people had with Diana. Some suggested that the press had switched instantly from criticizing Diana, particularly after her divorce and rumors of romantic relationships, to exalting her as an untouchable figure. Magazines like Private Eye that tried to critique the sudden shift saw a sharp drop in sales. Nonetheless, many sociologists believe the outpouring of grief was an organic expression of deep affection, partially because Diana symbolized something more than monarchy. She embodied the notion of kindness, relatability, and defying traditional royal protocol. This entire saga had profound personal consequences for Prince William and Prince Harry, who were just 15 and 12 years old at the time of their mother's death. The days that followed were a blur of public duties, tributes, and personal mourning. Later in life, Harry spoke openly of the deep psychological scars left by the tragedy, describing experiences that sound very much like post-traumatic stress. He recalled how surreal it felt to see strangers weeping over his mother when, as her son, he could not bring himself to cry publicly. Both princes have repeatedly highlighted the role their father, Prince Charles, and grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II, played in protecting them from the media's constant scrutiny during that vulnerable period. Still, controversy continued around Diana's passing. Conspiracy theories circulated regarding the presence of a mysterious white Fiat Uno that some eyewitnesses claimed made contact with the Mercedes just before the crash. Multiple investigations, including the British Operation Paget, probed allegations of foul play, rumored secret pregnancies, and involvement by intelligence services. Ultimately, these investigations reaffirmed the French findings. The crash was a tragic accident, primarily caused by driver error and excessive speed. Nonetheless, the swirl of alternate theories has remained a fixture in discussions of Diana's death, fueled by those who believe powerful figures wanted her out of the public eye, or that the paparazzi's role that night was more sinister than reported. Some of the most poignant revelations came from those close to her, like Colin Tebbut, who were never interested in sensationalizing the tragedy. They simply wanted to convey the heartbreak and sense of duty felt by those around Diana. Hearing Colin speak about that night is especially compelling because he knew Diana's day-to-day habits, her personality, and her vulnerabilities. He was not some distant official, but a person intimately familiar with her routines. Consequently, the sincerity of his emotion resonates with those who hear his story. Colin's statements about his time at the Paris hospital captured just how surreal that night became. Even as he recognized that Princess Diana was beyond help, he was concerned about the slightest indignities, camera lenses peeking in from a nearby rooftop, or the hospital room's heat causing a fan to blow her eyelashes. Small glimpses of compassion like these paint a heartbreaking picture, a loyal staff member going to extraordinary lengths to preserve the dignity of the woman he served, even in death. To understand the gravity of this event in a historical context, remember that the monarchy had never before faced such modern scrutiny. British royals typically carried themselves at a careful distance from the general public. Diana challenged that norm by engaging directly with charity work, AIDS patients, and anti-landmine campaigns. She used her platform in a way no royal had done before, bridging a gap between crown and commoner. This connection partially explains the global outpouring of grief. Many people felt they had lost not just a symbolic figurehead, but a genuine friend. Prime Minister Tony Blair famously called Diana the people's princess, a phrase that captured how many viewed her. President Bill Clinton recalled how he and First Lady Hillary Clinton were profoundly saddened by her death, lauding her charitable endeavors. Kofi Annan, Secretary General of the United Nations, recognized the substantial impact she had on humanitarian causes worldwide. In short, Diana was more than a princess. She was an emblem of empathy, forging emotional ties that transcended royal protocols. Nonetheless, no coverage of Diana's death is complete without acknowledging the swirling media presence and the paparazzi's role. In the hours following the crash, photographers were arrested, their cameras confiscated, and film reportedly seized. There was widespread condemnation of the paparazzi's relentless pursuit, and many believed their pressure caused the fatal accident. Later investigations, though, placed the central blame on Henri Paul's impaired driving rather than the chasing photographers. This dichotomy between the paparazzi's moral responsibility and legal findings remains a complicated facet of the story. Public outrage toward the paparazzi, combined with grief over Diana's death, spurred conversations about ethics in celebrity journalism and the lengths to which photographers will go for a snapshot. When looking at the big picture, Colin's revelations reaffirm that the heartbreak of that night extends far beyond official inquests and conspiracy theories. They remind us that real lives were forever altered. A driver mourning his absent presence at the crash, two teenage boys suddenly losing their mother, a global community feeling robbed of a beacon of kindness. Even those not personally connected to Diana felt the tremors of her death in the days that followed, when Britain's normally reserved culture gave way to public weeping on a mass scale. Memory is a tricky thing, though, and as time passes, the lines between what happened and how we felt can blur. 10, 20, even 25 years later, new interviews and new perspectives continue to paint a fuller picture of Diana's last night on Earth. Yet the indisputable truth remains that the bright light she shone in the realm of public service and personal warmth was extinguished far too soon. In the subsequent years, multiple memorials have been dedicated to Diana. There's the Flame of Liberty near the Pont de l'Alma in Paris, which for a time was covered in tributes and messages. Then there's the Diana, Princess of Wales Memorial Fountain in Hyde Park, officially opened by the Queen in 2004. In 2021, Princes William and Harry unveiled a statue in Diana's honor at Kensington Palace's Sunken Garden, commemorating what would have been her 60th birthday. These reminders stand as testaments to her lasting influence. No amount of memorials, however, can fully encapsulate the sorrow and longing felt by those who knew her intimately, people like Colin. Their personal connections were shaped by small interactions, long hours of travel, and the mutual trust that grows between a staff member and a royal figure who is also simply a human being. That's why stories like Colin's are so precious. They give us a window into who Diana was when the cameras weren't flashing, and in hearing his tears, in his confession of guilt, in his recollection of that heartbreaking moment in the hospital, we're reminded that beyond the iconic photographs and headlines, there was a real person at the center of this global tragedy. A tragedy indeed, but also a moment in history that continues to impact the British royal family and the entire institution of monarchy. The changes in protocol, such as flying the Union Jack over Buckingham Palace when the monarch isn't in residence, were a direct outcome of that seismic event. The royal family's approach to public engagement also evolved in part due to the lessons learned from Diana's life and the response to her death. In the years following the accident, the public came to witness William and Harry's progression from grieving teenagers to adult royals, forging their own paths. Both have shown a desire to keep their mother's humanitarian spirit alive, championing causes like mental health awareness and charitable initiatives for the disadvantaged. Their mother's influence is evident, suggesting that Diana's legacy thrives in the new generation of royals who carry her memory forward. And that is why Colin's confession resonates so powerfully. It reminds us of how deeply Diana was loved and how her death rippled outward with profound force. People like Colin have waited years to speak, struggling with personal grief, guilt, and loyalty. Now that he has broken his silence, we see a final puzzle piece snapping into place. It isn't about scandal or sensationalism. It's about closure, understanding, and a reminder that Diana was so much more than a tragic figure. She was a beloved mother, friend, colleague, and humanitarian. Even as the world eventually moves on from the immediate shock of her passing, the memory of Princess Diana remains vivid. She wasn't simply a style icon, a paparazzi target, or a headline maker. Her empathy, approachability, and hands-on style of charity work set a precedent in the modern royal family. Her driver's tearful recollection highlights the day-to-day affection she cultivated in the people who worked closely with her. Even though tabloids and official investigations may claim different perspectives, no one can invalidate the core truth of those who actually stood by her side. In the end, Princess Diana's driver brought us something rare: authenticity. It's the kind of authenticity the public had come to associate with Diana herself. Through his words, we catch a final glimpse of the closeness, care, and human warmth that defined her relationships behind closed doors. And if there's one thing we can take from his story, it's the realization that the outpouring of love after her death was neither shallow nor fleeting. It was the natural response to a person who, despite her royal title, reached across barriers and connected with people from all walks of life. What do you think of Colin's heartfelt revelations and everything we've explored about Princess Diana's final moments? Does hearing from her trusted driver change your perspective on that tragic night or her lasting legacy? We'd love to hear your thoughts, so share them in the comments section below. And while you're here, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more in-depth stories. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time,